This was in September of 1965.
Right, yes, Kennedy, as I looked so many years
But
ago.
in reality, it's a wonderful life, and it's not the life for everybody, but it is mine. And so I choose to engage in it as best I can.
30 years old on this
This is a
picture. It's
picture
my
on the
graduation.
front steps of St. Mary of the Angels Convent.
When I made first profession, I think is when this picture was taken.
I was young here. I was 19. I was skinny, and I
A
was
very good life, yes. I'd recommend
This
it.
picture so you could see I'm not photogenic. And when this came through, Erkers offered to give me a new pair of glasses.
This is a little premature baby that I took care of. It weighed 1.5 pounds, and they thought it was going to die. And so we've kept it alive.
Taken in either 1952 or 1953.
No, it was taken after I made my first vows, September the 29th, 1945.
This is a picture of Sister Thelma and me. It was taken in the
This
60s.
is my final profession in February
We
1952.
were all asked to have a professional photo taken. This is mine.
Couldn't ask for any better. Yes, it has been very good.
This is a picture of my mom and dad and I on the day that I made my first vows. We wore the little...
Again, this gave me an enormous beginning and really did change my life in ways.
As myself in 1963. She had this photograph.
This was on my entrance day
Framed.
29 years ago. Today, December 8th, 1979.
Just as we say to ourselves, continue courageously.
When I finished grade school, I worked at a hospital in St. Charles, Missouri. During that time, I was able to work as a nurse's aide. Then I started high school, and I thought more and more, and I thought, I think I want to be a sister. And that's how it started. My first assignment was director of the newborn nursery. At that time, we were very busy, a lot of babies. Our day started at 7 in the morning. We stopped maybe at 3 or 4 o'clock, but then we had supper, and then sometime we would go back after that. When the babies came and they were perfectly healthy, they were just overjoyed. But then there were some that had anomalies, and that was very, very difficult. But that happens.
Well, I just always wanted to be a sister, I guess. When I was in high school, we used to go over and carry trays and do little things at the hospital, and I just fell in love with the place. I've been here 65 years. I started out on night duty here at St. Mary's, and then went right from nurse's aide into St. Lachaux to the nursing school. I tried to treat everyone the same. And I think the doctors thought that we had a happy place to work in. Not every day was, happy-go-lucky, but we really had a lot of happiness in the place. And after a little while working at the hospital, it became a part of me. We got together and started talking about what our vision was and what our mission was. And those things meant much more than just the paycheck that people were taking home.
When I graduated from high school, there were about 3 things that a woman could do in those days. You could be a secretary, you could be a teacher, or you could be a nurse. First of all, I couldn't type, so the idea of being a secretary was totally out of the question. In order to be a teacher, I would have had to go to a college, and I knew I couldn't afford that. Nursing was affordable. At the time that I went to nursing school, it was a 3-year diploma program. And in those years, you couldn't be married, and it was only women. And so we worked together, we ate together, we went on affiliations together, and we had fun together. I kid you not when I say those 3 years were the most influential 3 years of my life. So I came to the convent in 1960. I was asked to go back to St. Louis U and sign up to get my baccalaureate. One of the things that the congregation has been so absolutely wonderful about was the focus on education. They made an investment in us that I'd like to think has been repaid any number of times. And then after having some other clinical experience, I asked to go back and get a master's degree, which they permitted me to do, and that then set the course for basically where I am today. I cannot explain how grateful I am, not only for that education, but for the experience, for the support that I've received all of these years.
I was 25 years old when I entered the community, March the 9th, 1957. You gradually realize you have a vocation. And so I dragged my feet and tried to do other things. And so anyway, you know, you give up fighting after a while. And so I accepted the call and followed it. And here I am in all my splendor. You knew that the work was there, and you wanted to do it. It wasn't that it wasn't hard always. And in those years, you know, you have your youth and you have your energy, and where it might be hard at times, you don't think of it as being hard, you know. There was many, many good days, and they far outweighed the bad. One time I was taking care of a patient up in Baraboo. Excuse me. And she was always cold. We got to know her very well because she came into the hospital pretty regularly. And she was just a delight. She was a darling. And she says, so she was always cold. Every time you walk in the room, she says, I'm cold, I'm cold, I'm cold. So one time I said to her, I says, listen, I said, you are going to be cold in purgatory. And she looked at me and she said, sister, I'm a Methodist. Oh, that was funny, I thought, you know. And whenever I would see her years afterwards, she'd always look at me, and I knew right away what she was thinking. My happiest memory is life. Yes. I have a lot of happy memories.
Well, I've been happy wherever I've been, and I'm happy now.
It's been a wonderful life. I don't think I've ever had any regrets.
I'm very content and happy with the way my life has turned out. I wouldn't want to change it, I'll say that.
I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I entered the convent.
It was in 1943, and I needed to get a job to get 50 cents for my bus pass to go to high school. And so I began working at St. Mary's Hospital on weekends, doing the dishes for the patients, and I got $1.50. So I had 50 cents for my bus pass, and I gave my mom 50 cents, and I had 50 cents to spend, and I thought I was the richest girl in the world. I entered the convent that year in July of 1943. I was 14 years old. I have a master's in pharmacy and I have a master's in nursing. Then I went to Africa as a missionary. I thought I'd finished my life there, but we were attacked by armed robbers, and the sister with me was killed. And then I had to come home and went through a severe depression. And I never went back to work in Africa. We closed our mission there. But after that, and I finally got well from the depression, I began home nursing and hospice home nursing. I couldn't work in a hospital because we were the doctors and everything in Africa, and I knew I'd never obey the doctors. So I did hospice home nursing, and that was wonderful. I feel very fulfilled, and I would not change anything in my life.
When I was in grade school, I was taught by a group of sisters from Terre Haute, Indiana. A couple of them said, oh, you need to be a sister, you need to be a sister. And I said, there's no way I'm going to be a sister. And so I came on to St. Louis University and entered nurses school here. At the time, I was practically engaged to a young man who was a Marine and working in the Pentagon. We both decided that we would finish our education preparation before we would consider a marriage or anything like that. And I remember telling him that I just needed to be more clear in my life if indeed I had a vocation to the religious life. Phil had a little difficulty understanding that, but he said, I'm sure it won't be for you, so you just let me know when we can get back together. And we didn't get back together, but we stayed friends for many years thereafter. Times were difficult, but when you know you have that support, besides your sisters and my family, who kept saying, oh, I know this is going to be difficult, but you certainly can do it, and you've done it before, so go for it.
I worked at St. Joseph Health Center back in 1947. And then in 1948, Mother Concordia came for a visit, and they wanted me to visit with her. And somehow, some way, I was signed up to go to the convent in a month. And I wanted to really be a hospital sister. I did not want to be a teacher. So that was the early beginning of my 60 years as a FSM. And so I entered August the 6th, 1948. They had told me they wanted me to go into accounting. That's where I landed. We worked and we prayed and we studied, and we just took everything as it came. And we used to have really fun times. If you know where the tunnel is here, we used to go down in the evening when we had what we called our recreation period. Some of us would get in those big laundry carts and somebody would push us down and we had a lot of fun doing things like that. I'm grateful for the years that I have had, and thank everybody that I've crossed paths with. I worked, first of all, in the dietary department during the years I was going to school, and then from there I went into actual dietetics work. How you put someone on a bedpan makes a difference. How you draw somebody's blood, how you deliver a meal, how you do any of that is so important. Everyone can do it that has been trained to do it, but how you do it and who you are as you do it is key. What's really important is that you know your gifts, and that you know that something bigger than you, call it God, call it Allah, call it whatever you want to call it, but something bigger than you is operating in and through you. And if you can be present to that, then you'll be present to those whom you minister to. And it doesn't get any better than that.
It's a great life. There are just some days that are a little tougher than others, but in reality, it's a wonderful life. And it's not the life for everybody, but it is mine. And so I choose to engage in it as best I can. To be present to me is as simple as engaging in conversation, having a cup of coffee, stopping to meet someone in the hallway, and inquiring about how they are, with a genuine interest, not how are you and keep walking.
When I'm present to you, I'm there for you. And I'm listening to you in such a way that I'm trying to really hear what you're saying, but not just hear the words.
It could be a smile. It could be just sitting there listening to someone. It could be holding their hand.
Just that holding patient and just kind of hanging out, as it were, just being present.
It's not about me. Being present really is about being attuned to and with the other person.
I've been a sister since 1945, and I knew a long time before that I wanted to be a sister. I went to Baraboo, Wisconsin. That was the beginning of a new hospital. I really had no experience for this, But I went up there and I was in the finance department there. I always felt like those were my prime years. And I think I contributed a lot to that hospital. We took care of a lot of patients that had no money. In the beginning, we always took ODL, Our Dear Lords. And we knew we would not get paid. We took care of them anyway. I came from a poor family myself, so I could sympathize with what they were going through. I'll be 91 in April. Yes.
I worked 7 days a week, and I always went to school part-time. I got this letter from the university, you have to graduate this coming year or else you won't be able to continue because you can't go longer than 8 years. It said, by the way, you don't have a foreign language, you still need 2 semesters of French and public speaking. And so not only was I working 7 days a week, I was taking French and public speaking. Here I've been at Glennon almost 47 years.
When I was in grade school, I wanted to be a sister. However, I was not Catholic. My mother said to me that I was too young, that I did not know what I wanted, and she made me wait a year. And so after that year was over, I went back to her and I said, well, I waited a year and I still want to be baptized. And so Father said to her, okay, we can do this now. And my mother said, but I don't want her to be no nun. And Father said, she doesn't have to be a nun. And so she said, okay. In my heart, I just could not tell her that I wanted to be a nun. So I said, well, I'll just be baptized. After I graduated from high school, I told her that I wanted to be, a sister then. And so she said, well, if that's what you want, if that's what will make you happy, then, you can go ahead and do that. It's important to love yourself as you are. And just to love what you do whatever you can do, and just be yourself.
I was working there at St. Anthony's on the switchboard, and I wasn't entitled to a vacation week, but she told me they were having a retreat at Mount Alverno, and so I thought, oh, that'll be a little vacation, I'll go do that. And I think that's where I really got my calling. Sometimes I was in the kitchen, sometimes I was in the laundry, and sometimes I was out helping dig up the dandelions. We did some sewing, or sometimes we played cards, or played a game of some kind, or worked a puzzle. That was before they had TV. 2011, I'll celebrate 60 years. Doesn't seem that long.
I just always had a real attraction for nursing and to be a sister, and I grew up in a real Catholic family, but I worked at St. Mary's during high school, worked in the pharmacy. I saw happy people. That really struck me. It's like they were pretty ordinary. It's like, yeah, I can do that. So here I am years later, and it's, kind of a daily thing. I'm a nurse midwife. And so for me to have hundreds of times encountered new birth was just always a thrill for me. And you never got tired of that. And it was just always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. It's been a good life. I think it's not a panacea for anything, but I think it's like, you know inside that that's right for me. And I think in whatever state of life that we're in, it's that each day thing. Yeah, I can do it. And maybe God's saying, give me the strength, but it's like I can do it.
I came over to St. Mary's to talk to Mother Joseph Concordia, and she thought I was young enough to start and become a nun. I was 15. I loved working in surgery, and we just kept going, and we'd do one case after another. Of course, we had a little fun afterwards. Several things would come along. Worked in the surgery department for 43 years down in Ironton, Missouri, and Arcadia Valley. And then I came up here to the Mother House. It was a good life, yes. I think the mission is just wonderful. Everyone is so thoughtful and so helpful.
To know that you're part of that healing ministry, part of that mission, it's really something to think about.
I saw my job as a mission and had a great passion for what I did, that working in a hospital is a great privilege. It's not like any other job because we're taking care of people, and that's very essential to what we're all about.
It's not just our mission, it's their mission, and that we're all in this together.
There's so many good lay people who see the mission as much as the sisters do, and I think that's a very important part of life.
4 of my other sisters had already entered the convent, and I just couldn't wait to join them. We're from the country, and I guess they don't think you have much sense when you first come, or, to do big jobs. So they put me on the floor, and I would fill the water jugs and help give baths and change the beds and work with the patients that way. Over in our pharmacy, I was the director from 1966 to I retired in 2000. And it was like going to your own family every morning. It was just so neat to get up and go to something that you liked. And we saw all of our employees get married, have their children, build their homes, get their new cars. And then their children went to schools and colleges and got married, and really, truly family-spirited. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I really did like my work.
Up until the age of 21, I was not able to speak clearly. At the age of 21, a teacher and a doctor referred me to Cardinal Glennon. What Glennon and the sisters gave me was a new life. I was very attracted by how unassumingly they gave to whoever had a need. When I was 24, I knew that God was calling me, and so I came.
I have a twin sister, and she always says that we were always going to be nuns. One week I want to be a Notre Dame, and next week I want to be a Sister of St. Mary, and it was just really a struggle. So with the help of a priest friend of ours, I made the decision to become a Sister of St. Mary. When I was in Dillon, South Carolina, we used to get a laboratory magazine called Medical Laboratory Observer, MLO. And they would request people if they wanted to write an article for the magazine. So I wrote the article for MLO about checklists, and the magazine contacted me and told me that I had been awarded one of the prizes, so which was really a surprise to me. It was $500. So I took all my lab personnel out to dinner down in Dillon is a little town, it's 11,000 people, And then also the sisters that I lived with, we also went out to dinner. So that was kind of a nice experience. I never thought I'd ever be an author of one article.
I was always impressed with the sisters because they gave bedside care, bedside visiting. They motivated you to do the best that you could do. They were a lot of fun to work with. Seriously, they really were. We had our down times, but, you just bounce right back. You have to. You can't dwell on it. And then somebody would come along and, pep you up again, and you'd start in all over again. Because if you wallow, that's bad. You can't wallow in it.
As sisters, we did not get a night off, so we would work like 7 nights a week. The night shift was technically 11 to 7, but we were expected to go to the hospital about 9:30, and we would have a little supper, and then we would go on the units. In the morning, we did not start report until 7.
So we really worked till about 7:30. So that was a really long night. We were young and motivated, and sometimes we got a little extra rest or something like that, but it was pretty hard life.
I was looking for something, I want to say something greater. I was more familiar with teaching orders, and I thought, I don't want to teach. And the funny thing is, later on, I ended up teaching. So God has his funny ways. I've stayed for 45 years, knowing that you make a difference in a person's life. And that person may not show it. I think we all know that when people are afraid, when they're stressed, they will act differently. They may curse, they may frown, they may do whatever, but maybe inside, they're really scared. So whatever you can do to just let that go, to just accept them without judging at all, to just accept that person and be there and let them go through whatever they're going through. And eventually that person knows the difference. And when they see that you can accept them like that, that's love. That is love. It's not just a job doing this or that, but there's more to it. There's a whole lot more to it. And there's a big history and heritage. And when you think of heritage, what have you inherited? And that is a treasure that is passed down, that has been inherited, and all you have to do is accept it and then use it.
I think people who have that genuineness of heart, that sincere caring, have picked up or have caught that spirit of what has meant so much to us as Franciscan Sisters of Mary in promoting and enhancing our healthcare ministry.
If you are with people long enough, you do hear them say, our mission and our sisters. And I think they're very grateful. And I think that'll carry on.
I didn't want to be a teacher. However, I ended up teaching, but teaching nursing for a good many years. It's a little different, teaching nursing, I suppose, from teaching children, although I always liked children. But I have many happy memories. I have many sad memories. But I think my happy memories are better than my sad memories. I always remember Dr. Paletta was having a program on television about children burned, and Mary Frances was about 4, I guess she was here. And he wanted Mary Frances to be on that program. So we catered. He said to her, now, Mary Frances, what do you want to tell all the little girls and boys? And we had Kate tutored her. I'm going to tell all the little girls and boys that they shouldn't play with fire. So when the day of the television, he said, Mary Frances, what do you want to tell all the little girls and boys? And she said, I want to tell all the little girls and boys that they shouldn't cook any eggs. And that's how she would burn. We almost died. But yeah, I still keep in touch with her, yeah. I am constantly impressed by parents. Constantly. They amaze me. I guess how they get that strength to do what they have to do. But I guess it's love that does it.
I always wanted to be a sister since I was 5 years old. So I looked and looked and looked. And my mother would never let me join a convent of any kind until I was 22. I'd finished college and I had worked a year. And at that time, she wasn't really able to tell me that I couldn't anymore. So I looked around for a congregation who I would have a fit with. And I was very interested in interracial justice. Fairness and justice, it spoke very widely to me in my younger days, and I found that in the Franciscan Sisters of Mary. I always think it's a privilege to work in any of our hospitals. It's really a special call. We have a special place in their lives.
My family was not Catholic, And they were not very happy with this. They thought it was like, like they said, I was leaving the world and they were part of the world. And so, that was it. So they didn't really have much to do with me the first few years I was in the convent because they thought that I had forsaken them, so to speak. As a student nurse, you were accustomed to working hard. And as students, we were in charge of floors. And so I was accustomed to hard work. I wasn't really bothered by the work. I was more bothered, I guess, by the confinement. You couldn't even go outside without permission. And I was accustomed to being free, and I wanted to go out and walk around or whatever. You had to get permission to do that. And that wasn't always something that was given freely, The novices told me one time, she said, well, Sister Pavarella, that was my name at the time, she's got such an even temper, she's mad all the time. It's because I was always expressing myself and it probably came out as if I was angry. I mean, I was content and happy. It never occurred to me to leave it, I just expressed myself when I didn't particularly care for something.
I became interested in being a sister at a very young age. In fact, age 6, when I had polio, I made a promise to God that I would be a nun if I could walk again, and I did in 2 years. I went on to college at St. Louis University, and they said they needed someone in medical technology, so I did that for 4 years, and then they made me the director of the lab, which I then did that until last December, which was 35 years as lab director. I don't think it would have bothered me if I'd have worked in housekeeping the rest of my life. I just loved anything I did. I'm glad I was able to go on to college and get my master's in management, and that was very fulfilling, but I didn't see that as a necessity to be happy. Being in the laboratory, of course, we take care of folks that don't live. I just became very involved in the little babies that don't live. I know that's hard to say, but that's what happens, and we would then take care of those little ones. And so I worked with the cemeteries and the funeral homes, and that's not done in many places with the tiny little ones. It's not, I could go on and on about that, but it's just not done the way we do it, and I'm very proud of that.
I knew I wanted to be a nun, but I didn't want to be a teacher, so I came here because I thought I wouldn't have to teach. One day when I was cutting grass, I just decided, and I went in the house and told Mom. That was it. Everybody wants to feel like they've made a difference, or they could just go cut wood somewhere or something, but they feel affirmed because they help people. And we enable them to do that and feel good about it.
To know that you're part of that healing ministry, part of that mission, part of that charism from Mother Odelia, it's really something to think about.
At the end of the day, that can really be refreshing to know that you really made a difference in somebody's life and you really helped somebody to begin the healing process.
If you realize that you are in a healing ministry, that everything you do has some special benefit to the patient, you get a feeling of well-being and certainly job satisfaction in knowing that you're doing something a little bit above just ordinary work.
I worked for a nun. Her name was Sister Mary Karen. I told her that I think I was going to join the Army because that way I could further my education and see the world. And she said, well, I think you ought to join the Army of Christ. So it just went from there. I lived with Sister Emmeline, and I think there were 3 other sisters there, and she was dying of cancer. I don't know, I used to have to sleep in the same room at night when she had her chemo because she would get real weird dreams, and it was quite an experience. We'd spend our days off with her, and I remember one time I was giving her a bath. She said, well, what are you going to do with your time when I'm gone? So it was kind of a hard question to answer, but that was, it was a good time. It was a hard time.
I enjoyed employees coming by the desk and speaking to me. I was in accounting and payroll, so I saw quite a few of them when I gave them their paycheck, and it was always kind of nice to be able to give them, their money and a good word. Whenever an employee lost a relative or a friend or someone, I would send the email to them with the quote from St. John Chrysostom. And that quote was, "Those whom we love and lose are no longer where they were before. They are now wherever we are," which helps you to realize that they aren't gone. They're still around, and you can talk with them and call on them and know that they'll be there. I really love that quote when I found it, because it helped me, myself,
Growing up as a child, I never said that's what I wanted to be. Even when I graduated from high school, nothing. I had gone to college for 2 years and gotten a job on the newspaper in Jeff City. When I moved there, and then I became involved in church activities, met the sisters, and started working in a parish, that something just kind of happened to me. Everyone there was just very welcoming and encouraging. There weren't a lot of other people who were considering religious life at that time, at least not among my friends with whom I'd gone to high school or who I was working with at the time. Actually, I remember my boss at the Tribune, when he heard that's what I was going to do, he called me in his office and said, I kind of think of you as a daughter, and what I would tell my daughter, don't do it. In his kindness, he did that. But I think it's just important that when I pray in the evening or when I go to bed at night that I'm uncomfortable a little bit, because I know there's something more that I might be able to do.
My very first job was passing ice water, because I knew nothing about healthcare when I entered, and they still hadn't taught me how to take blood pressures and do the basic stuff. So the sister who was in charge of that unit had me passing ice water. So I passed ice water to every patient probably 4 and 5 times during the course of my day over there. I said those patients had the freshest ice water that they've ever had until they could teach me some other things. There's a story that I recall when I was in Madison. We had gotten a letter from a woman who had been in the behavioral med unit, and it was to the staff up there. I wasn't at the hospital when she was a patient because it was 20 years earlier, and she said, it took me 20 years to write this letter to thank you all for what you did. And I use that story a lot and have talked to staff about it. I said, you don't know where during the course of your day the person is whose life you're going to touch, who will remember that on, and you will make a difference. So if you're not paying attention, you're going to pass that right by. It did get challenging, there's no doubt, but a sense of fulfillment when you went home, that you felt you're really tired, but you felt like you did make a difference to someone during the course of that day.
I made a day of retreat at our parish, and Monsignor Steck, who was the chaplain here at the convent at that time, gave several talks. And he talked about the Sisters of St. Mary, how they roller skated and played baseball, and how they walked to the hospital with their white habits and the red flowing sash. The more he talked, the more I was interested. At the end of our conferences, Monsignor announced that Pearl Harbor had been hit. So I went home and I thought more and more about that. I thought, I think I better do something with my life that's, worthwhile. So I started thinking about going to the convent. It took me 2 years to get here, but that's what really spurred me on, I think, was Pearl Harbor and that day of retreat. I think just the satisfaction that you were doing a good job kept you going. And when you went to bed, you really slept very well. I'm very grateful for my vocation. It's been 65 years now, and I didn't realize I would be able to still be giving my time.
As we grow older and as we grow smaller and as we cease to be, hopefully, we have imparted a love of God's people to those who we have been privileged to walk with and minister with.
We've influenced a lot of people, and I think that we want that spirit of taking care of patients first, above all, to continue.
I thought that the nurses that I work with were the best in the world, but now I see these young nurses, they had the same kind of caring that the nurses had that I worked with back in the 60s.
I do believe that people who are part of this ministry, who have been for a long time or who come, are brought here for a reason. So I would ask them not to take that lightly, that they do carry a responsibility greater than just they're looking for a job, that there's some reason they're put at this point in this time in this ministry.
The thought of not having sisters is not something that I've been greatly concerned about because I see the people and I know the kind of hearts and minds and souls that they have.
It kind of gives me goosebumps to think that they really caught on, and it's it's their life, and they want to do the best they can.
I think that has lived on tremendously in every place where we are. And I don't think it's necessarily something new that we give people. It's just that we affirm things that they already want to do themselves.
I just think it will always exist, that our mission will be carried on.
I think that people have the commitment that we have. And so there is no reason for me to believe that this mission and ministry will not continue on. Just as it did when I entered and when other people entered.
I think people who have that genuineness of heart, that sincere caring, have picked up or have caught that spirit of what has meant so much to us as Franciscan Sisters of Mary.
Here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. And I think if we, with a sense of commitment and with trying to relieve the people's need, that hopefully we will have the needed response,
You are standing on the shoulders of those sisters who have gone before, that from way back to 1872, all that has been done has been coming down or coming across in time, and you are here in this one part in time, and that is that link, and you will continue, and it will continue on. And to be part of all that is magnificent. It is magnificent.
We're all in this together. And I just want to thank them and encourage them and pray that we'll be able to continue for years and years and years to come. Thank you very much.
We have to depend upon them to pass it along. We hope so that when we're in heaven, we can look down and say that healthcare system's doing pretty well. I don't know whether you look down from heaven or not, but you look from heaven anyway.